Good afternoon. My name is Rob Zile, and I'm the director of the Center for Public and Nonprofit Management here at the Levin College. I wanted to say welcome and Happy New Year. I hope 21 is starting off on a higher note than 2020. And for our students that are joining us today, I hope that spring semester is off to a great start. It's hard to believe that we're already to the end of January of 2021, but time is flying, I guess, if you're having a good time. Today, we're here to listen and learn for another outstanding panel. Today is our third of our four series of our Meet the Mentor panel discussions, and I'm excited to have four panelists here today, as well as Professor Jeffrey Bowen to moderate the panel. Before we get started with that, and before I pass the baton over to Alexandra to get the party started, I wanted to say thanks for our panelists and for Professor Bowen being here today and helping us out. I also wanted to pass along some sad news. Our founding director, Senator Grace Drake, passed away at the end of 2020, and it's been a really rough time for me personally, as she was a dear friend and mentor, kind of like a mother figure, and just reflecting on what she's meant to me personally and to this program. This is her baby, and I spoke to her even at the end of last year, and she was still enthusiastic about the program and the kind of things that we were doing. So although it's a sad note that she's not here with us today, I know that she's here with us in spirit. I know for a fact that she wanted us to continue on the foundation and legacy that she built, and she's excited about the mentors that we had and the students that we had part of the program. So I am definitely saddened by her loss, but I know that this is what she would want us to do at this time and place. And on behalf of her and her family, I just want to say thank you for continuing her legacy, all that she built. One of the greatest things that she always told us as a team is to find the best of the best and the brightest mentors, because if our mentors were the top of their game, then even if our students only went about halfway or halfway successful, they'd still have an amazing career. And I think we hit it out of the park again for this round. The four folks that we're going to showcase today meet that mark as far as being the best and the brightest, and their careers are still on that upward trajectory. So I'm excited to be along with them in that journey. So without further ado, I want to hear more about them and less about me. And I want to say thanks again for it. It's going to be an exciting conversation. And I want to pass the baton over to Alexandra Higgle to get the party started. So Alexandra, rock and roll.
Well, thank you, Rob. Hello and welcome to our third Meet the Mentors panel discussion in this series. Thank you to Professor Jeffrey Bowen, Joy Johnson, Marissa Pappas, Jeff Ryder, and Philip Wenk for joining us today. Before I introduce our moderator, I'd like to mention that our fourth and final Meet the Mentors panel featuring local government and public leaders will be held on Wednesday, February 24th at 4:30 right here via Zoom, and will be moderated by MPA Program Director, Dr. Clayton Wukage. If you aren't in the mentoring program and would like to receive access to this event, please feel free to contact our center. As always, we will reserve some time at the end of today's panel for audience Q&A, so around 5:30 or so. But please feel free to send your questions throughout today's event in the designated Q&A section. So just type in your question, send that over, and Professor Bowen will address that towards the end of today's event. But you can send in your question at any time. Additionally, we'd like to say a special thank you to our nonprofit mentees who submitted questions ahead of time. So thank you to Beth Elliott, Maisha Smith, Ace Key, and Nikki Price. We're excited to have your mentors answer those questions today. So with that all said, I am going to begin by introducing our moderator, Professor Jeffrey Bowen. Jeffrey Bowen is a certified fundraising executive and a board source certified governance trainer with a bachelor's in psychology from Kent State University and both a master of nonprofit organizations and an appreciative inquiry certificate in positive business and society change from the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. In addition to many years in sales and marketing management, Jeffrey's career as a nonprofit professional includes working as a crisis intervention counselor, youth services caseworker, after-school program fundraiser as director of development and public affairs for the Lake Erie Girl Scout Council, and as the executive director of Greater Cleveland Habitat for Humanity. As college lecturer in organizational leadership at the Levin College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University, Jeffrey teaches undergraduate and graduate level courses in nonprofit management, organizational leadership, and fundraising. And when I was an MPA student, I had the privilege of taking one of Professor Bowen's courses, and it was fantastic. He serves as co-chair of the Levin Dean's Diversity Council, as a member of CSU President's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, as a member of the Master of Nonprofit Administration and Leadership Advisory Committee, and as an advisor to the Center for Public and Nonprofit Management. He is faculty of record for the Neighborhood Leadership Cleveland program and serves on the board of directors of College Boarding Pass. Jeffrey is also an accomplished writer and musician and a lifelong member of Cleveland's vibrant artistic community. I don't know how you do all this. This is incredible. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for being with us today. And with that said, I am going to pass the mic over to Professor Jeffrey Bowen.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you, Alexandra, and it's an honor to be here with my esteemed colleagues. It's really joyful to have so many of our students now engaged as alumni. Both Alexandra and several of our panelists are graduates of the program, and of course, thank you to Rob for the great work that he does. And to Philip, who's going to be joining us as well today, and I'll be introducing all of them shortly. So I'm going to start off with Joy. Joy Johnson is the Executive Director of Burton Belcar Development, an organization that I was well familiar with when I worked at Habitat for Humanity. She's been the director since June of 2020. She was the Associate Director from 2014 to 2020. Burton Belcar is a nonprofit community development corporation serving the Buckeye, Shaker Square, Buckeye, Woodhill, Central, and Kinsman neighborhoods on the east side of Cleveland. The organization develops real estate projects in these challenged communities and provides supportive servicing and programming whenever and wherever needed. The mission of Burton Belcar is to empower citizens and revitalize blighted and underserved communities, something which they do exceptionally well. A graduate of the Jane Addams Business Careers High School in Cleveland, Joy received her bachelor's degree in communication arts from Allegheny College in Pennsylvania, a Master of Public Administration degree, and a certificate of nonprofit management from Levin College at Cleveland State University. He's a graduate of Cleveland Bridge Builders class of 2015, serves on several community boards, including the CLC Leadership Council and the East 128th Street Block Club. She lives in the Buckeye Shaker neighborhood with her daughter, Kendall, who's a high school student at John Hay Early College. So welcome, Joy. Thank you for being here. We're also going to be joined by another Levin alum, Marissa Pappas. Marissa works as a sexual assault kit initiative victim advocate for the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. In this role, Marissa advocates for survivors of sexual violence in both civil and criminal justice systems and assists the city of Cleveland with submitting backlogged and cold case sexual assault kits for testing. Marissa is a proud Levin alum twice over, receiving both her BA in Nonprofit Administration and her MPA, Master of Public Administration, from the college. And in her spare time, she is a beekeeper. And thank you for all of that great work that you're doing on behalf of some really important causes here in the Cleveland community. And again, a joy to have another one of our alums here today. Jeff Ryder, who I also had has a student a few years back, is the Associate Managing Director at the Cleveland Playhouse, where he's worked in various roles since 2013. As the Associate Managing Director, he leads budget development and forecasting, human resources, develops relationships with institutional funders and community partners, and is part of the strategic planning team. Mr. Ryder has a Master of Public Administration degree from Levin College and a Bachelor's in International Relations and Drama from Tufts University. He serves on the boards of the Cleveland Kids Book Bank, the Cleveland Professional 2030 Club, and is chair of the Book Bank's Young's Professional Board. Mr. Ryder has been a stage manager at several theaters, including the Tailspinners Children's Theater, Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, and the Berkshire Theater Festival. And I also understand that he has just recently been engaged to teach in the theater program at Cleveland State University. So student and faculty and esteemed leader of one of our venerable nonprofit organizations. We're very proud of you, Jeff, and welcome to this conversation. And then Philip, who is someone that I have met through Rob since I've become involved in the various centers and working with Rob and Alexandra on various projects. And Philip earned his MSBA and MBA from Xavier University. He has a PhD in clinical psychology and specializes in trauma. He's currently pursuing an additional doctoral degree in behavioral management. He's worked on numerous advisory boards and committees. He founded the Wenk Family Foundation, which provides funding to over 40 local agencies. Additionally, Philip has created several programs to provide much needed interventions for underserved and not served populations. One of those programs, The Power of Harmony, provides music therapy and mentorship to incarcerated young men, and that is being taken to scale at the national level. He started his first foundation right out of college, has provided after-school programs for children in various project areas. President George H.W. Bush awarded him with a National Point of Light for his efforts to empower children. In a prior position when he was the technical consultant at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, he was awarded a presidential citation by President Bill Clinton. To date, he has helped to raise over $200 million in funds and services for the nonprofit sector. He recently accepted a position as the first social innovator in residence at John Carroll University, where he is currently teaching, and I think he's in his classroom right now. I will be in my classroom at the end of this conversation. Great to see you, Philip. And also just important to mention that in addition to all of the many service roles that he is also father to 3 amazing sons and 1 guardian angel. So thank you all for being here today. And again, thank you to the team for inviting me to do this. I'm really honored to be here, both as faculty and as a long-time member of Cleveland's nonprofit community. So I want to start off by just jumping right in with our panelists. We want to hear a little bit about your current role. I've sort of given you the basics from the bios, but what do you do on a day-to-day basis, and how does that relate? How does your professional and your academic background come together? Marissa, we'll start with you because you're looking like you're ready to start.
Oh, I'd be happy to. So thank you so much for the introduction. Like Professor Bowen had said, I am a sexual violence advocate at Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, and this job looks so different from the day-to-day, as I'm sure all of our jobs are so dynamic. But I it could be anywhere from helping to explain the criminal justice system to a survivor who is trying to figure out if they do want to make a police report and pursue justice through the system, to going to protection order hearings, or helping to coordinate between therapists and case managers with services. Sometimes my job is also working on side projects, for example, with the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative with Cleveland. And in that case, I'm in archived case files and cataloging them over and over again for 8 hours a day to try to make sure that they can get where they need to be tested so that we can pursue justice for those survivors of cold cases. Other times it's just having a conversation and checking in with coworkers or survivors and wanting to know what we can do to serve them best. What does justice look like to them if it can't be found in the system, or that's not how they want to pursue justice, right, in the system itself? So it looks so many different ways. In times of COVID, we've made a lot of adjustments to make sure that we can still be there for survivors and make sure that COVID is as less of a barrier as it can be to reaching people and making sure they're served fairly and equitably.
Awesome. Great work. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Joy, how about you?
Yeah, Marissa, just hearing your stories, I'm a true crime junkie. So I almost feel like what the work that you do could be turned into a show and we follow folks as they seek justice, but I digress. So working at a community development corporation, we are very much government adjacent, I like to say. So my public administration background is very helpful as we try to work alongside government. We get most of our funding from the city of Cleveland through the Community Development Block Grant, which is just one example, which is funded to the city from HUD. So very much need to understand how government regulations impact the work that we're trying to deliver in the community. So having that public administration background is so key. And then the nonprofit management side, especially now being maybe six, 7 months in as executive director, really the people management is front of mind for me. We've had a lot of change to manage with having new leadership on top of operating in a COVID environment. So day to day for me, I'm just checking on my people, making sure they're good, making sure they understand what it is that they've been assigned to do. If they don't understand it, they feel comfortable coming to me if they have questions. I almost, kind of approach it like parenting, even though some of these folks are, older than me. I'm not old enough to be their parent, but I'm just really, checking in on them and making sure that they are motivated and that we're aligning what their personal interests are with the needs of the organization. And if that's not a good fit, then maybe you shouldn't be here. And it doesn't mean anything bad, but just making sure if folks are happy what they're doing, then it's going to show in their work and vice versa. So that's where the nonprofit management right now is sticking with me.
Nice. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm happy to go right after Joy because I will echo some of the things that she just said. So much of my job right now is focused on seeing our organization through this. We were saying this year, now it's into year 2, but seeing us through this crisis and making sure that Cleveland Playhouse can continue to serve the community today and on the other side of COVID-19. So making sure, for me, specifically in my role, a lot of that is managing our budget and making sure that we can survive this year and to plan for the future and whether that's digital programming, virtual experiences, or hopefully soon resuming in-person programming, but making sure we have all those pieces and parts and infrastructure to support service to the community. It's also a lot about navigating health concerns and the safety of our staff today throughout this crisis. We are continuing, our education programs continue to operate every day. We're serving teaching classes for Cleveland Metropolitan School District on a daily basis. We also operate academic learning pods that serve over 400 students in person every day. So making sure that our staff remains safe while they're coming into contact with people on a regular basis. And fundraising is certainly a big part of it, to see us through to the other side. And we're trying to strike from our vocabulary words that have a re prefix. We are moving forward to a new chapter at Cleveland Playhouse and in our community. We're not going back to February 2019 or February 2020 or before that. We're looking forward and trying to determine how best to continue our service to the community. But the part of Joy's remarks that I'll echo is it's also just a lot of talking to people and making sure that that our people are all moving forward and feeling good and engaged and supported by Cleveland Playhouse. So that takes up quite a fair amount of time too.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for being here and thanks for that great work. Philip.
Yay, saved me for last, did you? I'm so impressed with what you folks have already said. My job was so eloquently put by the executive director of my foundation, where he said, Phil, what does he do? He starts fires, and it's his job to tend to which ones to grow and which ones to put out. Our family started off very poor. I mean, we didn't even eat every day, stuff like that. So I have a very keen memory and desire to make sure that I minimize the children's suffering and experiences in those areas. And so what I focus most of my attention on is really finding common ground. I like to work with community leaders, funders, social service agencies, and communities to see what is the systemic issue and what does it take to address a systemic issue and to empower that population to deal with it and eliminate it. I am not one for providing levels of dependency. I'm one for empowering folks to do what they're capable of doing and to watch the amazing productivity and life come back into people as they do that. So I work with lots of funders to make sure that we are using money in the most powerful, wise, and efficient way as possible. I also help to develop streams of income for nonprofits because it's important for them to be as self-sufficient as possible. And I also am constantly encouraging organizations to look at how they can work together to serve greater population and be more efficient with resources they have at their disposal. That's me.
That's great stuff. I'm going to turn this around since we started off with you last. Now I'm going to make you first because while I've got your attention, how do you tie into the mentoring program? What's been your involvement here, and how does that work?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's a privilege. There's times where I think I'm more the mentee than a mentor because remain teachable. So I can always learn from my mentee as well as she hopefully is getting something from me too. So it's a privilege to serve, and the program there is as good as they come. So I'm grateful that I even have the opportunity to be a mentor in that program. But more importantly, from my personal perspective, my whole start in what I've done in my lifetime started with a person taking the time to be a mentor to me. And that's, I can't tell you, I would not be where I am today had not certain people in my lifetime taken the time to give me the guidance and the mentorship to hone my focus and my energy so that I could be where I'm at today. So that's why I like to serve as a mentor, to give back what somebody gave to me.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you. And Marissa, I see you really nodding your head in agreement there. It sounds like that resonates for you as well.
It for sure does. I was just thinking back to the first time that I met my mentee, Ace, and I was doing a what do you want to get out of this sort of thing session with Ace. And Ace said, I'm hoping to learn X, Y, and Z, but I'm also hoping that in the course of working together, you'll be able to learn some things from me too. And so I think that, Phil, you said it perfectly, right? We're all here as learners and then folks who teach. And Levin has been like a mentorship powerhouse for me, with so many professors and fellow students and folks who may not fall neatly into those two categories. I think that
Nice.
so much of where we're at on our path, we owe a lot to so many people who have come before us, but we're also learning side by side with a lot of people too. That's why it was really exciting when I was asked to be a mentor here, because it's nice to think that maybe there's something you can share that's of value too. So it's a wonderful experience, and I'm so glad to be part of it. Very grateful.
Good to have you, and thanks for giving back.
Thanks.
It's a joy for me as an educator to see and a lifelong member of Cleveland's nonprofit and artistic community, to see the cycle of people who come through and then give back, and come through and give back. And even Philip, your comment really resonates with me as well, because there are so many people in the nonprofit sector who, for one reason or another, find themselves engaged in some work where they can then help somebody else to engage in similar kinds of work. And that leads me right to you, Joy. Talk to us a little bit about your mentoring experience and what you're doing here now.
Sure. So this is my second year serving as a mentor. And like Marissa, I was honored to be asked to serve as someone's mentor. And I think, and both times I've had the privilege of mentoring African-American women who were students at CSU. So that just really, was close to my heart, that I could empower someone who could be in my shoes one day. So like a lot of the panelists said, the opportunity to give back, because so many folks have poured into me over the years. I'm happy to have the opportunity. And the other lesson I've learned is that, it's what you know and who you know, especially in Cleveland, with it being such a small city. And so sometimes folks who look like me don't get a chance to be in those circles. And so I'm always trying to pull in new faces and new voices into this nonprofit community and get them connected. So that's what gives me the most joy. So, but again, it's not a nepotism type of thing, right? Because you can get in the door, but you still have to, produce. So shout out to my mentee, Maya, who, just in my normal interactions, I get these emails of different job available, postings, and I sent her one and she's like, oh, I got an interview. Oh, I got a second interview. Oh, I got the job. So I'm like, wow. So now she's working. I was like, oh, okay, my job's done, Rob. She already got a job. She didn't need me as a mentor anymore. But just those little things make such a big difference, because here she was studying it in school, and now she is, in the workforce, and all I did was send an email. So that's why I like mentoring.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's also important too, that your job is not only not done, but it's just getting started. Because professionals can, continue to need mentoring. We're all learning as we go. This is a learning culture that we're trying to create in our nonprofit organizations, so that we're always asking, always growing, always trying to figure out how things work. And that's a lovely story about, making that one little connection that leads to something bigger. But our professionals constantly need mentoring. One of the other bazillion things that I'm engaged in, I serve as a mentor for the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Cleveland chapter. And in AFP, we connect together senior professionals with junior professionals, and midlife professionals with other professionals, and people who are career transitioning really make use of that. So it's not all just about the student and the professional, and it's also really awesome for me, just as a teacher in the program, to see three of you sitting here who were not that long ago in the program yourselves. So these are great opportunities for us to all learn from each other, and folks like Phil and I, who've got a bit more experience than some other folks, bring together what we've got in the picture, to offer. But I can tell you right now that there isn't a day that goes by that I am not learning from my students, and I'm not learning from my colleagues and the people around me. And Jeff, I'm going to take that right, lead that right next to you, and let you talk a little bit.
Sure. I will sort of repeat a couple of things that everyone else has said, but I so value in my own life and professional experience the relationships that I have had with a variety of types of mentors. Some of them at Cleveland Playhouse or connections that I've developed through my work. But also at Levin. I participated twice as a mentee in this program and was really fortunate to develop relationships with Gina Vernacey from Playhouse Square and Julie Rittenhouse, who is the Director of Foundation Relations for the university. And those were such beneficial experiences in developing my own career path. But as several others were saying, Levin is such a place where everyone learns from each other. I had a great experience taking Professor Bowen's class. I was also in the Columbus seminar with Marissa, and I think that's a great example of students getting the opportunity to learn with and from each other in a sort of non-traditional education experience. So when I had the opportunity to be a mentor, I jumped at the opportunity. And I'm really happy to be paired with Beth Elliott, as she's a current MPA student and also sort of navigating an early career in the arts and fundraising. So we have a lot to talk about with each other.
Nice, great. And thanks for sharing about your being mentored by Julie, who's a longtime colleague and a seriously excellent professional fundraiser. What about you, Marissa? Was there any pivotal moments in your career where someone who was mentoring you made a difference?
I can't point to just one moment, but I think that for me in my own path, my own journey, it was a lot of professors saying that they believed in my work or believed in whatever I was doing at the time, and just hearing that somebody believed in potential was almost enough. Like, that's all that was really needed, maybe like no other conversation. And so for me, that was incredibly impactful. But I think that coming to Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, with that being my first, I guess, big girl job, so to speak, there are so many different directors on my own team and even my direct supervisors who it's not just a supervisory role, right? It's about developing you, and that development does not stop from the moment you're hired onto the team. So every check-in and how's the day going and how is this tough case is a learning moment. And it's one where even there needs to be, if you're learning or something, needs to be corrected, it's still an opportunity to develop you into, where you want to go. So many different moments. And while I'm speaking, I also wanted to say, Joy, like, it really resonated with me when you said, like, I have the opportunity to bring other folks who aren't often given resources or opportunities or like the same like avenues of power, these channels. Like, that is so important. I think that is one of the biggest and awesomest things about mentoring, is that needs to happen more often. And we think about systemic change when we think about making things more equitable, diverse, inclusive. Like, it is through these informal channels as much as it is through formal channels.
Right.
So that really resonated with me, Joy.
Right. Excellent. And Joy, that's a great pass. Thank you for those comments, Marissa, and heartfelt and clearly this relationship between the university and the professors and your colleagues and the other people you've been working with and your fellow students has helped you to move into the, as you called it, your big girl job, but you're a seriously professional and well needed and much appreciated role in the community. And it's those relationships, I think, that really resonate. And part of the reason why we're here and part of the reason we're having this conversation today is to talk about those things. And Joy, was there some pivotal moment for you when somebody else, where you walked in their shoes or stood on their shoulders to help you move yourself forward?
For sure. And very similar to Marissa, just having that person say that they believed in me and that they saw leadership potential in me. So for me, it was definitely the former executive director of Burton Belcar Development, Mr. Timothy Tramble, who left the organization in 2020 to become the CEO of the St. Luke's Foundation of Greater Cleveland. So, but I worked alongside, this is my only big girl job right out of Allegheny. I worked at Burton Belcar. So I've had the opportunity to grow and progress. And it was because Tim saw leadership potential and growth potential in me that I didn't see in myself. And so just along the way, all the way up to encouraging me to seek his role as he decided to leave. So, and it's so interesting. It's easy for me now in this role to say to other people, oh, I see it in you. You'll be great. I know you can do this. And I can put myself in their shoes because they're probably like, wait, what? You see that in me? Because I didn't see it in myself. And Tim, spoke to me. And one of the things that Tim said that I share with people all the time is he told me my skills didn't match my credentials. So he told me, you're growing and you've reached a certain point with your undergraduate degree where I've promoted you kind of as much as I can. If I continue to promote you, I know you can do the job. But someone on the outside may look at your credentials and say, why is this person a director? Or why is this person, at this point, they don't have a graduate level degree. And that is what encouraged me to attend CSU. So at that point, my daughter was whatever, I was a mom. So it was very different from my undergraduate experience. And I was also working full time. So it just seemed so unattainable for me, but I was like, I'll give it a try. I'll take 2 classes. Right. And here I am, all of these years later. So I share that with other folks a lot.
That's great. And great that Tim, another Levin college person, was able to see that in you and move you through that process and mentor you in a way that helped you to move up in the organization. And one of the things we talk about in leadership and management all the time is that what we all should be doing, if we're really servant leaders, if we really have got our heart in this, and it's more about doing the right thing in service to the mission of the organization and less about my ego, then I'm gonna train people to do my job. I'm gonna bring people up behind me. I'm not gonna feel like this is my turf and I need to protect this. I'm gonna train my subordinates and my colleagues and my co-workers to do each other's jobs and to do my job so that I can move up or move out. And Tim Tramble at Burton Belcar with Joy Johnson coming in his shoes is a fabulous example of that. Moving off to take the foundation position and knowing that he's leaving this organization, that he's got 20 plus years of being at the helm of that ship, building the organization that's the venerable ship that you now guide. He was able to do that and then pass the rudder along to somebody that he knew could handle it. And my Cleveland State commercial is to say, and we are very happy to have that happen right here within the realm of the Levin College and in the mentoring relationships that we're creating right here for all of us. And I say all of us because it really is about all of us. Again, we're all teaching and training each other. That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. I want to jump into another question that I think is really important, and I'm going to bring it back to you, Philip, because they make comments about, Alexander said, Jeffrey, how do you do all that stuff? And I go, it's easy. I look at guys like Phil and go, I'm doing half as much work as he is. And so the question that I think is important is, how do you, have you ever experienced, what we call burnout, just like we're driving too hard, we're working too hard. Right now we're in COVID. We all have post-traumatic stress disorder. We're all in the middle of surviving a worldwide pandemic. Are you feeling that? Have you in your career or in your experience, come into that place where you go, I'm feeling a little cooked here? And if so, what kind of self-care methods have you used or do you recommend for alleviating that?
Great question. I don't think of a time that I actually felt burnt out. I have felt extremely frustrated. I have felt ineffective. I have felt useless. But for me, it's always been, again, looking for consensus building. finding common ground to re-jump something that I am passionate about. And I think my passion is what's kept me from being burnt out. And I am just an instrument. I mean, really, it's not me. I am one of a whole lot of people and a whole lot of energies that make things happen. So that also helps me because I know I'm not carrying the weight of something on my shoulders. I'm helping to carry that weight. So I'm never that important. And with that mentality, it helps me to keep in perspective again my role. The funding I provide and the things that I do in the community, the folks who've gotten to know me know I am very insistent that I don't need plaques and stuff like that because I didn't do this for you to give me something. I do this because of the amazing things you're doing for others. And I think just keeping that perspective that I'm just one of many helps me to not take on too much burden so that I really feel like I'm just overwhelmed and I'm not doing any good anymore. And how do I'll tell you, how do I take care of myself? Well, I'm a big believer. Animals are amazing healers and children are amazing teachers. So when I'm feeling too important, too scared, too whatever, I like to go and play with children, just watch them play if I can't play too. Or I like to run around with a dog, or I like to do yard work and just play in the dirt and look like an adult. So those are the kinds of things that I do to take care of myself. Otherwise, I just remember that I'm just one of many serving a greater good.
Nice. Thank you for that. And I love that animals are healers, children are teachers.
Well, I also say, but this might offend some people, I say adults are basically necessary evils. What can I say? All right.
Marissa, I want to take the same question to you, particularly because of the kind of work that you do. Because you are in a position where your daily work is dealing with people or dealing with the results of people being in severe trauma, and trauma at the based on violence. So that you're deep in that trench where you separating your personal from your work life, balancing that and not allowing it to break you down or wear you down becomes really important. How do you do that?
Boy, I wish I knew. Thank you so much for the question. I also see that it looks like a fellow colleague of mine at CRCC put in a question too about this topic we're talking about. So a thing about trauma is that even if you are not the person who is directly experiencing a traumatic moment, by being around trauma itself, hearing about it secondhand, witnessing it, you take on that trauma secondhand, and you can exhibit symptoms as if you were the person experiencing it firsthand. So it's called vicarious trauma. And it happens to all of us, even if our main focus in our work is not trauma work, right? But what's important to know is that that happens. First of all, it's to be wary of it. And so there's a couple of different things that I do that's specific to my role, but maybe there are more generalities that we can pull out of it. So for example, when I am organizing case files for the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, I'm going through cases from the 80s, and it's the physical, big, thick case files of crime scene photos and descriptions of what has happened. And you have to sort these papers. It's, a very administrative kind of back of house sort of thing that you do to prepare them to send them off. But in the course of it, it's very easy to come across upsetting information. So one thing is limiting as much information as possible that you take in. And even with my work with survivors, it's a trauma-informed tenet to never require them to tell us what happened, what did they experience, right? Even when they go to therapy, they don't have to share any part of their story they're not comfortable sharing with. And we tell them that for as much benefit to them as for ourselves, because we know that in retelling trauma, you relive it as if you were exactly there in that moment. And for us as service providers, we limit the amount of details we we hear too. So that's one of the biggest ways that I do that in my job. And many times I won't know exactly what has happened to somebody until I'm at trial hearing them testify. So in a lot of ways that does not take away from the service of advocacy in any sort of way, right? Because you're relying on the survivor to give out information as they want to and trust you to, and then you work with where they're at. So in my personal life, I have nothing to do with sexual violence, violence work, trauma work. I get as far away from it as possible. There's so many good books and TV shows that I have had to write off, at least temporarily, because I can't ingest that more than I do in the 8-hour span of a day. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's very important to be self-aware and to do check-ins. And oftentimes we'll do this with colleagues in the office. You know, if we see somebody who maybe they're a little bit more withdrawn, or there's just something that's not going right in their day. I mean, you can kind of catch when trauma is getting to other people too. So that's a moment to say, hey, you know, how are you doing? Do you need to take the day off? And of course, I'm not a supervisor, so I can't send people home, but it's enough to just say, how are you doing? And I've heard from other people here, right? A lot of our day-to-day work is actually just checking in with people. How are we all doing, especially in the pandemic? So I think from a self-care aspect, it's distancing yourself from the work as much as you can. It's being aware of self. It's connecting with others as much and as safely as we can. And it's really filling up your cup. Whatever restores you, brings you back to center. There's no glory in running yourself down for this work, because how good are you going to be? How helpful are you going to be if you are only running at half capacity most of the time, right? And I think, Phil, this goes to what you were saying too. So thanks for the question.
That's brilliant, and thank you for sharing that. And really, you know, again, from the perspective of working in deep trauma all the time. Also, you're a commercial for emotional intelligence, you know, which we spend a lot of time talking about at Levin. It's self-awareness, social awareness, other awareness, empathy, and that thing that you described of checking in with your colleagues, checking in with each other, making sure that we're okay, and then also doing that self-help thing, you know, whatever that may be. You know, time in nature, meditation, time listening to music, or time alone, or time with your children, time with your, you know, with your pets, you know, for sure, for Philip. Joy, I want to bring this question to you, but I also want to put it through the filter. Your mentee, Maisha, am I saying her name correctly? Did I get that right?
Yes, but she prefers Maya.
Maya, okay, thank you for that. So Maya wanted to know specifically, what is the most difficult part of being the executive director of a nonprofit, and how do you overcome that difficulty? And we'll sort of just spin that right into, and how do you take care of yourself in the process?
Jeff, you made an interesting face when you heard that question. I'm just wondering what was going through your head. So as I said, I'm 7 months into this. So I think the biggest difference is, you know, as much as I cared about the work and the associate director role, at the end of the day, the buck didn't stop with me. It stopped with Tim. And now the buck stops with me. So all of the cliches that you hear about being that final person, being responsible for all of the decisions, in the moment, I don't feel like it's a burden. You know, I'm handling it. Things are coming to me. But I noticed I had a different type of fatigue at the end of the day. And the types of things that I was doing for self-care before I got into this role weren't working. So it really just took me acknowledging that, hey, you're using a different muscle in your brain, or you're using a different part of your brain and your heart and your emotion, and just kind of acknowledging that. So that was first. Then having to report to a board of directors as opposed to reporting to one person. So just learning what that meant, and recognizing that the board as a whole is my boss. But I always, you know, say kind of jokingly that if I run into one of the board members, that's my boss, or this is where I tell my daughter, these are my bosses, you know. But it was definitely a new approach for me, making sure that they you know, because they're handling change too, having someone who had this role for 20 years and wondering if they made the right decision, and me, and just wanting to, you know, manage their expectations and keep them in the loop. So that was new. And so self-care, I found a new hobby, and I have to be careful because it could, you know, go into this trauma path, or I could just be down this rabbit hole of ancestry and genealogy. So I just found yesterday my father's youngest sister. So super exciting. Like just, this is another one. It should be a TV show. Where we're talking about TV shows. But I did the ancestry DNA testing. And so I'm getting all of these matches, and just like you get all, so you get one message and you're in, and I'm looking up, like an hour has passed. So that's my new sort of self-care thing. And I'm going to meet her for the first time tomorrow. So that has just been like an unexpected ray of sunshine that I've had this week. So.
Nice, nice. You should try to meet her outdoors, because one of the self-care things that you're describing is also sitting at your screen.
Yes. You see, I have to go get a pillow to sit here now. And, you know, I'm really, the other thing I'm worried about, because 35 years, I'm gonna want to hug her. This is like 35 years worth of emotion and family energy. So this is gonna be tough. So I'll keep you all posted.
Good luck with that. That's a great story. Jeff, I'm going to flip it to you, and I'm also going to, same as with Joy, I'm also going to work in a question from Beth Elliott, your mentee. She's interested in knowing, how does working in the arts differ from other parts of the nonprofit sector, like social services or other things? And would you consider it to be sometimes more comparable to for-profit organizations or not? And that's a complicated question. And it also, you know, we'll let you run with that. But then if you would sort of tie that back into, how are you taking care of yourself as well?
Sure. Yeah, that is a complex question. But a few thoughts that I can share. The first thing that comes to my mind is I'll speak to Cleveland Playhouse, although I think this is true for other arts organizations too. We make about half of the revenue that is needed to run the organization from ticket sales. So that sets us apart from other nonprofit organizations in that we have this large earned revenue stream. And that means that we have some different considerations. You know, marketing and sales is a big part of our operation, where it may not be for a different type of nonprofit. But that also, on the flip side of that, I think there's often an assumption from our patrons or from the community that, oh, your ticket price is so high that must cover everything, and no, it does not. And I mean, there's I could talk all day or maybe all semester with my class about the reasons that drive some of those ticket prices and how that budget comes together. But there is a lot that we do that would not be possible without donors and grants and other contributed revenue. So that sometimes makes our job, especially on the fundraising team, more difficult, because sometimes there's a hurdle to overcome in explaining why we need your support. Why do we rely on donors to do the type of work that we do? What do we do beyond the work on our stage in Playhouse Square? What else are we doing? And it's quite a bit. You know, we're busy, and we're all spread out all across the community with artists and schools and a wide variety of programs. But there's overcoming that assumption of, well, first for specific to Cleveland Playhouse, overcoming that people think we are Playhouse Square, that we are the same as that organization, and we are close partners and friendly partners with them, but two different organizations. But then also that we do rely on donations is sometimes a challenge to communicate. But then getting back to the self-care question, My answer before the pandemic would have been different. I would say for me and my team and those of us who work primarily in the office or out in the community talking with funders and other partners, I would say a big part of self-care and avoiding burnout is staying connected to the mission and why it is that we do the work that we do. Not the specifics of, oh, I sit at my desk and I write grants or I enter things in QuickBooks or whatever our role may be. But seeing a play, seeing an audience's reaction to a play, being in a classroom where our teacher is exploring social and emotional concepts with a class of first graders, being a part of all those things is really an important part of avoiding burnout and finding meaning in the work that we do. Now, I would say that for our admin team, it's a much different thing for our teachers who work every day in the Cleveland schools. Their experience is much more secondhand trauma, like Marissa was just talking about. These are difficult environments, and particularly this year, with the pandemic and the other events of 2020 have been hard on all of us. But for these communities that are already high trauma, it's even more this year. So for them, for that part of our team, I would really say it's important to step away. It's important to take time off, to get out of the classroom occasionally, to take care of yourself and prioritize that. And I think that now in this virtual working environment and everything else that's going on, that's my advice for everybody. Across our organization, turn off at the end of the day. Don't be on Zoom more than you have to be. Take that time for yourself.
And if I could just jump in for a second, I think it's really important to be able to practice that level of self-care and knowing when to step back and get a break. There's that level of self-care, but then there has to be an organizational culture that self-care is important and it's worthy of investing in, and you feel like you do have permission as an employee to take the self-care and encourage it in others. So it's like there's the ideal of what needs to be done for self-care, but then there's like the working reality within your organization. And so, I'm very grateful to be at Cleveland Rape Crisis Center. We are all about self-care, but I also wonder what it is like in different organizations too, and different working situations for other people. So I'd be curious to hear anybody else add on to that.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Marissa. That's we've really been grappling with that and trying to overcome that in our culture. When I came to Cleveland Playhouse, we talked a lot about the highest professional standards and being a top tier theater, and I think we internalize those things as being counter to the ability to take time for ourselves and take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Interesting. That opens the door to another question that's something that I deal with professionally and also in my role at the university, and that's there are these differences. We spent a lot of time at Levin talking about this between the public service sector. Is separate from the nonprofit sector, those government entities. Joy, you talked about being this as a CDC, you're sort of a quasi in some ways because you're sort of dependent upon community development block grant funding and your relationship with the city, and yet you are a 501c3 nonprofit. Philip, you talked a little bit about being both a for-profit and a nonprofit guy. So I think that the self-care question is also a great segue into some conversation about what are the differences between the for-profit, the nonprofit, and the public service in terms of how we do business, what we prioritize, and maybe even issues of self-care. And I'll throw that to any one of you that wants to jump in on that. Or I'll call on you, Phil.
See, thanks. Well, the courses I teach entrepreneurship a lot and social entrepreneurship now and such. And I tell them really this mindset that there's a difference is unfounded. The singular difference between a not-for-profit and a for-profit is you don't report a profit. So nonprofits should run more business minded, and be more savvy and more focused in their energies and efforts. And I certainly think that would lead to greater uses of resources, greater expandability of what they do provide and such. I'm not sure where over the years it turned into a, more of a, well, let's do good, feel good kind of thinking with the nonprofits. The reason that nonprofits are so successful at what they do is because they are fully committed to a mission, versus a for-profit that may be a product or a service or something. And that social aspect that nonprofits focus on, that need in the communities, or that service that's not being provided, is a vital aspect towards just, a sense of self, a sense of greater being, providing folks with basic needs that corporations don't focus on. So I'm not sure I answered your question. I think the duality between them is very similar, but with that social component, the nonprofit, your altruistic paycheck becomes way more important than your bottom line. I guess that's the differences I see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Marissa, you're also at that intersection where you're providing a nonprofit service, working for a nonprofit organization, and providing a service that tucks up under that the realm of nonprofit, and yet you are in the judicial system, which is on the public side. So what is that intersection like?
It's a really interesting one, and maybe the answer to I hope the answer to my question is somewhat valuable. But the example that I will use is how we explain our role in the system to survivors and also to other community partners. So being an independent, not embedded in the judicial system advocacy organization, we are able to fully support a survivor in how they choose to engage with the system or not engage with the system. So for example, let's say on a case, a survivor is scheduled to go and testify at a trial, right? Their witness is very important, being that it's their story, right? Or their testimony is very important, being that they're the star witness in the case. For some survivors, going, even if there's a court order for them to go, is not what makes sense to them, and it's not good for them and their story and what they want to do with their case. So my job as an advocate is not to push engagement, right? I'm not part of the system trying to encourage them to engage. Maybe, for example, like the prosecutor's office might be on a different side of that, right? Like they're trying to get justice in the way that they're trying to get justice. And it would be beneficial if the survivor engaged so that they could get that testimony for the case in the trial. But my job as an independent nonprofit outside of the system is to say, you know what, with each decision, here are these kind of consequences, but ultimately this is your choice. So we're going to support you no matter what you choose, as long as you know the information, right? So that's one of the ways that it shows up in my work, but also being a nonprofit that closely partners with public agencies like the prosecutor's office, multiple police departments, and a lot of different partnering agencies. There is almost like a seamless blending of services, but also you kind of see the differences too. So maybe it's, grant contracts and, just kind of the ethos of where each of us is coming from. You'll see it too in a lot of the departures, right? Like a police department and a detective's job is to do the investigation fairly and, try to get justice in their way. But then us on the other side, we're here to provide all these support services, but also help to figure out what does the survivor really want out of this, and then support that full steam ahead, right? Even if it is a departure from what our community partners want on the case. So it's really interesting because you have to explain your role in that process over and over again, right? I'm here to assist as an advocate, but my job isn't to try to push them to engage if they don't want to. And similarly, just in different situations.
Right. Nice. And a fine line, it sounds like sometimes.
Yeah.
A really fine line.
It is.
And Joy, let's circle back to you on that same question, about the similarities or the differences between public, nonprofit, and private sector on your job.
I had a good answer. Then I started listening to Marissa, and I think I lost my train of thought. But Yeah, it really, so the challenges that we have in community development, what I've experienced probably in the last 12 months or so, is that while we, the best laid plans of mice and men, while we work with the community and come up with these awesome, what we think are awesome community development plans, government may come along and propose something different. And I'm trying to say this as diplomatically as possible, but we've had one situation in particular I'll speak about is the relocation of the Cleveland Police Headquarters from downtown to the Kinsman neighborhood along the Opportunity Corridor. So our organization had done a lot of work paid for by the city and local foundations to acquire land along what will become the Opportunity Corridor, a roadway that is under construction now that will connect I-490 to University Circle. And our goal, when we went out to raise money to perform this work, we said we want to acquire land to attract businesses that will create jobs, and not just any jobs, entry-level jobs that folks in the Kinsman and surrounding neighborhoods could create. So, and got the community on board with that. Now, one can argue that the Cleveland Police Headquarters does fit that that mold, but it just wasn't in our plans. And so, we had to adjust. We had to, look at what the benefits are and how do we engage the community and that sort of thing. We have a similar proposed relocation, or I shouldn't say proposed because I think it's going through, of the Cleveland Police, Mounted Police Stables, which right now are located on North Marginal in a very outdated facility. And the city saw where they own a lot of land in the central neighborhood, and they said, this place makes sense to put horse stables. So of course, again, there's nothing in our plans that said we wanted horse stables, but people did say that they wanted safety, right? It's also going to have a recreation component as a part of the City of Cleveland's Department of Recreation. There's going to be equestrian therapy and all of these things.
Nice.
So at first we were just like, what? We don't want horses. But when I shared it with the board, they were like, there are so many great opportunities there. And so that has been my experience in the last 12 months of our sort of parallel interaction with government, that we're kind of driving along the road with these sort of plans. And then government's like, hey, we're going to do this. And ultimately, these things are going to benefit not only the neighborhood, but the city as a whole. But it definitely is an adjustment.
That's really interesting, and I love that story, particularly when you start thinking about the equestrian component, and back to Phil's comment that animals are healers, could be very interesting. There are some great riding programs, some equestrian programs, and some service animal programs where they put children who have severe issues together with animals. We've got a lot of service animals with our returning military and returning citizens, who are partnered up with dogs typically, but I can see this in the horse realm as well. What a great opportunity potentially for our police department to work in collaboration and cooperation with your organization and the community to do some good community service, and maybe even some social service, and maybe even some rehab work as part of the fact that they have a stable of horses. That to me, there's a synergistic opportunity there that says, and our police department surely needs as many community engagement opportunities as possible. Both for their officers and staff, and also just in terms of repairing damaged relationships with the community, that exist over time. So that really, while that sounds like, oh God, horses, on the other hand, that may be a brilliant opportunity to have some synergy. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. I'm just going to take a quick look here. Eve Cervenka, I think I'm saying that correctly, has a question specific for Jeff. As a fellow former student of international relations and now a current MPA candidate, she's curious how you have used your background in international studies and the skills you learned from it in your current role in the nonprofit sector, which is also right in keeping with this conversation. So what do you have on that?
Sure. Sometimes I think I have such a strange and meandering path. So to hear that someone else is on a little bit of the same journey is kind of fun. To me, the things that I still use all the time, I used in the MPA program and in my work from my international relations degree, are understanding econ. I took several economics classes as part of my international relations degree. Understanding working with government helped in the MPA. It also helps me in my work. It's not really international relations or international government, but understanding the process of advocating for funding for the arts in the example of my current role is really helpful. And also, the sort of less tangible thing that I think carries through it all is from my international relations degree helped me to consider people with different backgrounds and to try to understand as much as I can about people with different life experiences than I have. And I think that carries through the MPA program and nonprofit work in whatever kind of nonprofit you work in.
Nice. I really, I'm really interested in all of the different kinds of experiences that we're all bringing together into these conversations. And one of our other students, Leanna Westergaard, is begging a question that I think sort of ties into this whole conversation about how does, when we talk about this as a mentoring program, how are we mentoring each other and how does that help us? How are we all staying safe and how are we keeping our work-life balance? How is the different things that we're doing from our educational background applying to our real world experiences and our big person jobs, to use your back to your big girl job. That tickled me. Because I'm still waiting for my big boy job. I don't know when I'm going to have it exactly, but I know it'll come one day. But Leanna's begging the question, what qualities do you look for in your leadership and development teams? And all of you are in capacity where you're working with people in some kind of supervisory capacity, whether it be with direct reports and or volunteers and or teams that you manage or lead. So what do you think? What are you looking for in leaders and managers?
Well, I can tell you what I do. One of my mentors very early on said, Phil, it's sometimes way more important to know what you're not good at than what you're good at. So when I attempt to put a team together to address an issue, I first look at what are my deficiencies, and then I find those who are great in those areas, and I bring them on as part of my team. That's kind of how I approach it. Short and sweet.
Nice. Jeff, you want to jump on that?
I think a lot about my personnel management class at CSU, really in a lot of contexts, but particularly about hiring. I think the phrase that was often repeated in that class is that you need to be congruent to the organization. To me, that means, and I'm hiring for a couple of roles right now. So the first step is, do you have the skills? Are you able to fulfill this specific role? But before we get to a hiring decision, there needs to be a consideration of, do you fit into the mission of Cleveland Playhouse? Do you share the values and what we're trying to accomplish as an organization? Our recently deceased managing director, Kevin Moore, would often say that an empty theater seat is the missed opportunity to change a life. And so I'm looking for people who understand that and share that value.
Nice.
So, Jeff, I love that quote, and it makes me think of what Philip said at the beginning. What keeps him going is the belief that the work can be done. And when I look for people to serve as leaders, they have to have the belief that the work can be done, in addition to the skills and the expertise, because it can beat you up. This can be really rough work. It can be a long time before you see the fruits of your labor. And so you just got to be one of those glass half full, optimistic people. I know it's sort of cliche, but if you don't believe it can be done, even if you've got all of the credentials, you're not going to be successful.
Nice.
All of these are great answers. And so sometimes it's a struggle to find what I could add. I love the idea that there has to be the congruency. Like, we're all in the business of why work, right? Why do we do this? We're all about the meaning, right? And so I want to see that sort of passion, but I also want somebody who can come in, complement the team that we already have. So Phil, I'll nod to you. And I also think that here at CRCC, we also do, in our interviews, we do equity prime questions. So it's really important to us that you can join this work in fighting for a more just and equitable, fair, inclusive, and diverse society. And that work has to begin with yourself as well. So I think that the willingness to learn and to self-awareness, to admit your own faults and understand where you need to grow. Again, echoing you, Phil. I think that is remarkable in any sort of leader. Also, the willingness to learn and grow with others and grow others too, right? Share the knowledge and bring other people up on your team as you yourself are on your way up. I think all of those things are the mark of a great leader, as well as having the vision and sort of the gumption to keep things moving along.
Nice. And we're all in these mission-based, scenarios, and many of us, and Philip is probably a great example of that as a philanthropist, in addition to all of the work that you do as a psychologist and as a teacher, coming at this whole idea of building wealth and building capacity, and then sharing that wealth and that capacity with other organizations. And also, not only are you distributing funds to 40 plus organizations, you're also out there raising additional capital. So you're engaged really on both sides of the fence, just as Jeff in his role is doing many things that are operational and programmatic, and dealing with volunteers and other staff people and sort of on the HR side of things, and yet also very much involved in fundraising. So these, I think one of the things about the nonprofit sector that we see more often probably than we do in perhaps the for-profit entities is that there's a lot more folks who are working as generalists. There's a lot more people who are who enjoy his job. It's leadership, management, HR, public relations, fundraising, staff building, taking care of herself, trying to do it all from her living room in COVID, and so we all have this sort of coming at this from a perspective of generalists, which is not to say that people don't become very specific. When you talk about somebody like Julie Rittenhouse or somebody who's a major gifts fundraiser, which is really different from somebody who is doing special event fundraising, by way of example. From my background and some of what I teach on the nonprofit side relative to the fundraising piece of things. But in the leadership and management side, we're all dealing with multi-levels. So students are looking at different programs, they're looking at different degrees, they're coming at this, in this particular cohort here tonight, many people who are coming at this from the pursuing a bachelor's or master's in specifically in the nonprofit management and leadership side. So my question for you is as folks who are directly engaged in as leaders and managers of nonprofit organizations here in Cleveland, What do you recommend for our students, not in terms of degree choice, but just in terms of preparation? What is it that they can be doing right now as either an undergraduate student or a graduate student that will help to prepare themselves for a role in a nonprofit or in a public organization? What do you think?
Well, I'll start. Again, I sort of building on the know what I'm not good at. I would recommend that whatever individual's passion or ideas are, to identify those people in the community that are doing it well. For example, when I want to understand what's going to happen in a certain neighborhood, I'll reach out to one of the program people at the Cleveland Foundation, because they certainly have done all their homework to understand what are all the issues and who are all the players and where could I fit in a role if there was one for me. So I would encourage those to look for those individuals who have the knowledge in the areas that they think they have an interest, and learn from them. Ask for an informational interview. They'd be happy. I don't know anybody who would say no. Ask for an informational interview, ask them how they do what they do, how they got there, what does it take to continue to do it, and ask other people the same questions if they didn't get all their questions answered. But definitely look for the people who are already doing what you want to do in this lifetime.
I would second that. And one of my professors at CSU, Stuart Mendel, I don't know if he's still there, gave that advice. Use your opportunity as a student to get into those doors. If you say, hey, I'm a student at Cleveland State and I'm interested in the work that you do, that's going to get you in more so than if you just someone off the street. I know if anybody says anything to me about Cleveland State, oh, you go to Cleveland, oh, how can I help? It just automatically turns on. So use that network, use that I'm a student, I want to learn about you, blow up their ego, all of that stuff. But just you have a window of opportunity as a student that you can get into so many doors that you can't get into otherwise.
Nice. Let me ask you a question. Let me hitchhike on that a little bit, Joy. Because we do so much of the work that we do at Levin in the classroom is service learning in one capacity or another, and a lot of it is examine an organization, interview a leader, interview a manager, write a paper about an application in the field, those kinds of things. Do you feel like those contacts? And I don't know if this worked for you in terms of your academic experience or not, but just because you threw that out there, I want to ask this question. Do you find that, or did you find that by looking at a specific organization sort of under the microscope for a class project, did you ever share that with the organization? Did you use that as a way to open a door to create some conversation with the people that you perhaps studied for a specific project?
For sure. So I tried not to take the easy way out because I worked for a nonprofit. I could have just done all of my projects on Burton Belcar, but where's the fun in that? So I did a project with Cleveland Playhouse. I did a project with the Ohio Community Development Corporation Association in one of my classes. Is a long name, I'm sorry. And that I led into my interest in the work of that organization. So it's a statewide advocacy organization for all of us across Ohio. And now I'm on the board of directors. So me getting that sort of inside access as a student kind of just was like, oh, this is cool. And I just started getting more and more involved. So some examples, you just build your network too. So some things I shared with certain organizations, some I didn't. But yeah, I definitely tried to reach out as much as I could.
Nice. Thanks. Marissa, what do you think? I can see the wheels turning.
Yeah, I'm so excited by what everybody shared so far on what can you do to get to be where you want to be. I think that your passion work does not have to wait for you to get your degree. And I can't overstate that. I can't understate that. Well, you know what I'm trying to say. So in my grad program for my MPA, I did a policy project, and I was able to, along with the assistance of, community partners, professors, fellow students, we were able to get a couple of different laws changed, and I think up to 7 cities regarding survivors of domestic violence being basically punished and of threat of eviction if they were to call the police for assistance in a domestic violence situation. So, all of us were able to accomplish that as students well before we had our degrees. And I didn't have direct training in domestic violence, right? And understanding that deficit, I was able to go to the folks who do and do my research to be able to do this work. So I hope you all know that you have permission to pursue your passions well before your degree. Like, this is life work, like you're already in it, you're already doing it. So there is no point at which you need the permission to go ahead and start doing it. You're doing it now. And also being in the mentoring program can help you too.
Shout out to Dr. Joseph Mead, who is involved in that project with you.
Yeah.
And also, I think if he was here tonight, that he would say that he learned as much from you and your colleagues, your fellow students on that project, with your passion and your willingness to really, to sort of chew that bone all the way into the changes in legislation and national recognition that project received.
Thank you.
So kudos for your involvement in that. And also, I think, but I think that comes back around to, this is how Levin students are engaged in making a difference in the world. This is also how Levin students are driving and encouraging, and to some degree mentoring our faculty to keep up the good work and to keep the faith and to keep going, because we're all getting our feedback from you, and even my colleagues who are deep involved in research on a daily basis. It's research about stuff that matters to people somewhere, somehow in the real world. So everything that we're all doing collectively at this institution is about trying to make the world a better place, trying to help to ameliorate the pain of poverty and everything that goes along with that, but also to have great theater programs and great dance programs and great artistic programs, and have music in the world, and to rescue animals and to bring people together on common projects through common ground, finding what it is that makes us all the same, and celebrating what it is that makes us all different. And Joy, you talk about your genealogy project. When you talk about the human species and all of us, all the different races, all the different ethnicities, we are all so close. Genetically, we are all so close. And yet when you talk about the diaspora of humanity, we're so very different, and in these days, in these times, when people are marching on our differences instead of celebrating our similarities, in these times when COVID drives us to be in this room and not in the real room, we have to all really, really work together to celebrate our commonality and to celebrate the mission of this institution relative to service, relative to change, relative to really working together and bringing us all into this. So we have these opportunities for our students and our faculty and our alumni and our staff to all work together one day at a time, one project at a time, one paper at a time. And you guys are clearly and sharing these opportunities where your academic experience was real. Your academic experience was writing about something or investigating something or doing something that was able to help someone or help you somehow in terms of moving forward. And that's why we're all here at this university. That's why we're here at Levin College. That's why my students are in the audience, and Jeff, your students are in the audience. Congratulations on that. Philip, you're coming at us from the classroom at John Carroll University. Bless you, because we are, children are teachers. I love that, I love that. We're all teachers. We're all learning from each other. And if a child asks a question that you cannot answer, then you are obligated to all children until you can. So make it our jobs to learn what the children are asking us and to be able to answer those questions with an open heart. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for engaging me in this role. It was my joy to help out tonight, but it's really about the panelists and your work. Philip, your work in the community is unbelievable. You get 2 presidential awards, and you surely get a kudos from Levin College for all the great stuff that you're doing for us. Thank you kindly for your time and your financial support and all the heart that you put into this. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to Rob Zile, and I'm going to thank him and Alexandra for putting this program together, bringing us all these great opportunities. Nobody works harder than you guys and your team to really push Levin forward and to push us into community and to make opportunities for our students and our faculty and our alumni to work together to make the world a better place. So thank you all for that.
Thanks.
Rob, back to you.
Thanks, Jeffrey, and the panelists. I think it was a great conversation. And I just want to say one thing. When Grace and I were talking about this concept of highlighting folks, she was like, who can we bring in? Who can we bring in? And we started to look at our database and our mentors. We don't need to bring in big shots or fly somebody in from Washington, D.C. or New York City. All we have to do is just go to the pool of folks that are already in the system. And so you all are rock stars. Thank you for being part of our team. Thank you for being part of our family. And I think this is a great conversation. And we appreciate all your efforts to support us in our role. And I'm honored and privileged to just be part of this and that you allow me to be part of this. And on behalf of our students in the college university, thank you for all that you're doing to bring this all together, and really appreciate your time this evening. So on behalf of everybody, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. And just a quick commercial. Our next session is going to be on Wednesday, February 24th. It's going to be the 4th and our last in our series. And this one's going to be on state and local government. So please mark your calendars, and we'll showcase another 4 outstanding people. So on behalf of the college, thank you. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.